Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. A very warm welcome to Talk Shop by FaizaTasneem. Today, today's episode, I have a very special friend live from USA right now with me. I'm very thankful to her for taking our time on a Saturday, where she could be doing anything, but I'm very excited to have her over here. Laura, my friend, has been working in management field, particularly HR domain, for the more than a decade now, and she has worked in different roles, various roles, and her progress through HR director now comes with a lot of roles that she has played along the line. What her role is and how is it shaping it, the different experiences that she have had along the line, how have they shaped up the perspective and in the HR field and otherwise, we are going to talk to her. But in addition to that, my friend is very keen, an avid learner about financial podcast. She stays very active. She loves studying new languages, and she loves spending time in volunteering, traveling, and playing with her dogs. So this is very special. Yeah. So very warm welcome to you, Laura. Thank you for doing it today with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited to be talking to you about so many things that that are very exciting. So, Laura, tell me about your childhood. What sort of child you were? What sort of upbringing you have had? What are some of the fond memories that you can share with us?
Yeah, so wow. So I grew up in upstate New York, an area called Albany, which is actually the capital of New York State, and it's about 2.5 hours from New York City. So growing up, it was nice because it was a smaller city, if you will, and it's interesting when I go back there now, it's really booming. There are a lot of new aspects of the economy up there, which is just wonderful. And I think obviously now during COVID, a lot of people are thinking, I live in Jersey City, New Jersey now, which is just across the river from Manhattan, right across the Hudson. But I do think that a lot of people are thinking, I want more space. I want to, kind of be in a smaller city again. So I do see that shifting. But my childhood, I had a lot of space to grow up, which was wonderful. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad worked for a train line that was up there for many years. So I had 3 siblings. I obviously still do, and all 3 of them still live up in that area. So when I'm feeling a bit homesick and I want to see my niece and nephew, I will go back upstate. But it was kind of nice because Albany as an area is in a hub of a lot of it's very close to many other cities, like I said, New York City. But if you wanted to go to Boston, if you want to go to, Syracuse, other parts of the Northeast, you're very central. So I was a very, I would say, gregarious little child. I think my mom, it's like middle child syndrome, right? So I was the 3rd out of 4. I have an older brother, an older sister, and a younger sister. And I just think you learn a lot through your relationships with your siblings growing up and, learning how to share, having hand-me-downs. And to your point earlier, I do think, I see my niece and nephew who I adore, but, having a cell phone at the age of 10, I'm like, I remember my first burner phone when I was 17, and it was because if my car broke down. So it's very interesting. I appreciate that I was a generation that didn't grow up with everything at your fingertips at that moment, because something was very special about that time that you just had to find a way to make it fun,
Yeah, true. So it seems like you were a pretty handy child for your parents.
I'm very fortunate. I have a really good relationship with my parents. I think, growing up, my parents did get divorced when I was kind of a preteen. So I think that, that was challenging, but, I think in hindsight, when you look back on difficult periods of your life, it really helps kind of shape who you are and how you approach certain situations. So, even when I think about that, I think even in my job now as an HR professional, just kind of having more empathy and understanding that you may not necessarily know what's going on at someone's home life. but just making sure you're being empathetic to the fact that, you know, you still can treat someone with kindness and respect, even if you don't know what's happening outside of work.
Absolutely. It's Laura is spot on, absolutely spot on. The experiences that shape us, you know, they also, you know, give us this particular insight that there are a lot of people out there who are probably going through the same thing. And it gives us such a, you know, depth of character that we can relate to them. And this really helps us in doing the job that we do wonderfully. So Laura, did you study in Albany as well, or did you move to another state and had your college time or in some other university?
Yeah, so you know, it's interesting. Based on your age when you start school, like, so I was born in November. So typically with November babies, you could either be pushed to the grade ahead of you, or you can kind of be one of the oldest in the grade behind you. So when I first entered university, I was 17 years old. So pretty young to be starting undergraduate studies. Yeah, but I ended up applying to a few schools, but I stayed local to where I was from. I went to the State University of New York at Albany, which is, you know, a SUNY school, they call them, in Albany, New York. And so I did my 4 years of undergraduate there, and I studied English and Japanese studies. But you know, my junior year of 2004, I studied abroad in Japan. And I remember that summer before telling my mother, you know, I think I'm going to study abroad in Japan. I'm going to start filling out the paperwork to apply. And she, you know, she kind of looked at me like I had three heads, because, you know, we definitely had the ability to go on vacations, and we kind of stayed local, would stay in the United States. But my family, I wouldn't say growing up we were big travelers. Like, we wouldn't really go anywhere international. And to me, that was always like very appealing. It was very exciting. I always was very interested in other cultures. So I just said, you know what, go big or go home. So I, you know, applied for the program. I got in, and then for about 6 months, I lived with the host family in Japan. And it really, you know, I was 19 years old, but it really opened my eyes to just kind of a very different culture. Really for the first time in my life, feeling like I was the minority, because, you know, Japan is such a homogenous society that they see this, you know, 5'9" blonde woman walking by. They're like, what's going on here? So, you know, it was definitely a very interesting experience, but I am very grateful I was able to do it. And I had a really great, wonderful time and met some wonderful friends.
Well, this is awesome, actually. And I'm so intrigued to ask you, what inspired you to study Japanese culture or studies at that particular time?
Well, what's so interesting is if my mom was listening to this, so I had a kind of a high school boyfriend who was very much into Japanese culture. And, you know, I was interested as well in school. I'm not sure how it is for you, but in a lot of the American schools when I was growing up, you had the option to study French or Spanish. Like, you kind of would pick a language in middle school, and then you kind of stick with that language through your last year of high school. So I studied Spanish in school, but I always thought, you know, I very much appreciate French and Spanish as languages, but I thought it'd be really nice and unique to do something maybe a little bit more challenging. Japanese is a very difficult language to learn. And so I thought, you know, I was excited by the exoticness of, you know, how difficult the language would be to learn and just the culture there. So I decided to pursue it. And what's funny is that by the time I was in my second year at university, I had taken so many Japanese related courses, that I just said, you know what, I'll have enough credits to double major by the end of my studies. It wasn't my plan, but I think a lot of us choose majors when we're younger and we're not really necessarily sure what it is we're going to be doing. We just kind of hope for the best.
Yeah. And so you traveled to Japan at a very young age. And you have been traveling. I've seen through your Facebook posts, you love traveling to different parts of the country, and of course abroad as well. So how has this travel shaped you? What does travel do to a person? Should we travel?
You know, I absolutely think we should travel. I have to say, you know, I've been extremely fortunate to be able to travel, sometimes for past jobs and work, which has been really amazing. I think, you know, for me, I spend money on my experiences and travel. Like, I don't care about having the nicest handbag or, the most expensive furniture. I really don't care. I prefer to do more action-oriented things with my money. And so, unfortunately, obviously with COVID this year, I had a couple of trips planned abroad. In December, my boyfriend and I are planning on going to New Zealand. So we're, our fingers are still crossed, but obviously we're not going to travel if it's not safe. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate different cultures. I love meeting, different people across the globe. When I studied abroad in Japan, I made one of my best friends who lives in Australia, and he and I are in touch regularly. Actually, my cousin lives in Australia now. So, I have to say that I just feel that when you spend time in other places abroad, you really have an appreciation for how people live. And, we're all human beings. I think even if we have different environments that we're living in, we all have similar feelings. We all go through similar experiences, love, grief, strife. Like, we all have those experiences in different ways and to different levels. But that's why, I mean, I just, I have so many countries and places that are on my bucket list. So I'm ready to kind of travel full speed ahead when I can.
Absolutely. We all are hoping that the world becomes very safe again and we can go back to the normals we used to have. And you're absolutely spot on. For all those young people who would be listening to this particular recording later, I think it's very important that we all learn how to travel, and we learn to appreciate other people's culture and their beliefs, and we'll learn to, live with them and accept whatever they have to offer to us. And this particular thing, again, Laura, probably you will agree with me, develops an insight in you. Some different angle or some angle and hindsight, or some different eye to look at things differently. It develops that sort of capacity in you, broadens your thinking ability, tolerating and working with different people. So Laura, you have been working in HR field for quite some time, and you have been to UK as well. You have had some experience over there. How is UK different from USA? Can you shed some light on it?
Yeah, of course. So, when I graduated college in 2006, I actually moved to London, England for a year, and I was working at an investment bank in London. And that's really kind of how I got my start in HR. You're essentially an HR intern, but you're really working a full-time job and you're expected to produce as a full-time employee. So, that was really my first time in a corporate setting. I was a young woman from upstate New York. My work history leading up to that point was, in, a sandwich shop and also being a camp counselor. So I think landing in an investment bank with very little corporate experience, your eyes are kind of wide open to, the way businesses run. I think that was a really great experience. Not only did I meet some incredible friends, but you really are able to understand, experience how a business functions. And being in HR, you really get a great view of all the different facets that go into hiring and retaining employees. So after that year, I moved to New York City. Naturally, a lot of people from my area moved down to New York City for jobs. And that's really where I got my first start as a recruiting coordinator. So obviously in HR, there are many pieces of HR you can work in. And I did that recruiting job for about a year. And I just figured, maybe I want to see what else is out there. I was really interested in more of like an HR generalist track. So obviously we met when we studied together at Birmingham University in the UK. My ex-husband is actually from that area. So, I had decided to pursue higher education there. But my long-term goal was to move back to the United States. So, the international program, I think it's incredibly important to study and have international experience if you can. But I knew that ultimately I wanted to focus back in the United States. So I ended up pursuing a certification in the US. So for any of your listeners who may not be aware, there is like a PHR certification. It stands for Professional and Human Resources, that you basically have to study this body of knowledge and then take a very difficult test that has a lot of questions about, HR strategy, federal laws, compensation and benefits. So there's different areas that really you focus in on. So this test is a little bit more specific to the United States because they're covering laws that are United States laws, right? So I spent months studying for that test, and luckily I passed. They
Great.
have other, yeah, and that's the thing. I think I definitely follow a lot of HR groups online, and I think, you need a lot of peer support, and you need to, connect with one another. It's so important to do that. And, some of these tests, they're very tricky. They can be very difficult. So I do think just constant learning and making sure you're re-educating yourself as you go. It's so important because laws change, people change. Our environment right now, things are changing, even with our political climate. So it's just important, I think, to have that lifelong urge to continue to learn, because as things change, you need to be able to adapt to that change.
Absolutely, you're absolutely spot on in here, Laura. Now that you've discussed that there are different certifications that you have to do if you're planning to be in an HR field in USA, and this holds true for all global places that we from Pakistan have to go to. So, would you be able to share some observation? There is another body, SHRM, that's USA based. So which one of these are good enough for students who plan to be studying, different, and also clear this for us. If somebody does a master's or MS from USA university in HR, are they eligible to work over there?
So it really depends, right? So, I work on some of the immigration matters at my company for foreign nationals coming into the U.S. to work for our company. There are opportunities for international students who come to study in the United States. They can apply for something called OPT. And so the OPT allows you to apply for work authorization to work at a company in the United States. And so, when school is in session, you're legally allowed to work part-time. And if, it's in between semesters where you're not studying, you're allowed to work full-time. And so, a lot of international students will take advantage of that because, of course, you have to work and make money. So that's obviously an option. I wouldn't say there's any right or wrong way of doing anything. I think we all have our own journey. We all have our own path. I personally, for myself, felt that on-the-job training is very important. When I started to pursue my master's in HR, I decided not to finish it because I said, I think I want to get back into the workplace and I want to start studying for my certification. That's a little bit more based in, laws and actual strategies in the workplace. So for me, I think it's very important that what you're studying is practical to your job, and it's not just this like high theory that you're not using day to day. So yeah, and the thing is, the certification I have, which is called the PHR SHRM, actually, which is the Society for Human Resources Management, they only came out with their own certification a couple of years ago. Everything used to be kind of like the one that I had, but SHRM, I think, decided to say, we're going to come out with our own certification probably because they realized they could make money with it as well. And so some people have both certifications, some people just get the SHRM, and they have like a certified professional, CP, or a senior certified professional, SCP. So depending on your experience and your background, you can apply for, whichever one you qualify for. But my feeling is that employers just want to see that as an HR professional, you're taking the reins to try to do something and further your own education. And I think as a professional, you feel like you have a little bit more, bearing or a little bit more clout when you say, I have my certification, I passed this very incredibly difficult test, and now I feel, and you feel that sense of pride as well.
Yeah, of course. It helps you, in so many ways, because once you do your master's and you come into the field of work, yes, there are theories that you can, connect with the work that you're doing, but I think this particular pandemic has taught us that it is always important for us to reskilling ourselves. These certifications help us brush up our skills and may help us move to the next level of the expertise that we want to develop. Laura, you must have interacted with a lot of young people in your HR, different HR roles that you are doing for the past 10 years. What are a few skills that as an HR you look in different people who are coming to join you? Of course, it is dependent upon the role that they are applying for, but there are certain skills that you all of us look for in young people. Can you talk about a few skills that are really important, and in particular this pandemic and this COVID situation? Do you think working on your skills, soft skills, hard skills, how important it is now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so important. And I think that, in terms of your relationships with others, your networking, it's, I have to say a lot of the jobs I've had, it's from past connections or staying in touch with people that I knew would be, really helpful kind of connections for me in the future. So for me, I think that, your soft skills, again, in HR, you're dealing with human beings, right? And so I think that having that empathy, being very humble, I do have to say, I read a lot in the HR space. One particular writer and thought leader named Steve Brown in the US that I read about, he says, you're working with people, right? So if you're someone who doesn't like people, you should not be in this space. And listen, we're all human. We get frustrated. We have our moments. But, for me, it's like every day I go into work, I really want to think about how I can make an impact, how I can help the employees, because our clients are our employees. Yeah. So I think that if I'm interviewing anyone in an HR capacity, or even someone who's more junior or just getting their foot in the door, I think that there's like an openness and a humbleness to learning. I think in HR, and especially in a lot of employee relations type situations, over time, you kind of learn a lot of different ways to manage a difficult situation. And I think with age comes experience. And I think if you're 1 year out of school, I think back to 10 years ago and the amount of experiences I've been through in the workplace and outside that have shaped me to who I am today. You're constantly evolving and changing. So I think that just having that openness to learning, and especially if you're a junior, you're not going to know everything. You're going to get that experience on the job. But I think having that openness to say, I'm willing to learn and I want to get my foot in the door is like the most important thing to me, because other things can be taught. You can learn how to run a report or look at data. But, if someone comes in and they don't want to work hard, or they're, really arrogant, like that's just not, I just don't think that's a good fit for this kind of job.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's very important for the people who would be watching this, especially the young ones, to understand that every place has a culture. They need to understand and absorb that particular work culture. And there are certain skills which are, which are likable for with everyone, regardless of the age group or the background that you're coming from. Being humble, that like you said, having a good EQ combined with a good IQ. These are the very important skills that students need to have. And in particular, I've been reading researches in this COVID time. So in particular, all those who would be, joining us in the near future, inshallah, when the world goes back to normal, the most important skills that students or young professionals, they need to have is the ability to learn to unlearn and to relearn. These are the terms which a lot of, researchers are using. And time and again, I have come across these expressions over there, that this is the ability to learn, to unlearn, and to relearn. This is very important. And Laura, thank you for emphasizing that it is the attitude which is very important. We can absolutely train these young minds or anybody else for the skills that we want them to have. But the attitude is so important. So Laura, you must have had a wonderful stay so far. And it's a beautiful journey and a lot of success stories under your belt. So would you like to, name some mentors that you came across on this journey, friends, family, or professional mentors? Would you like to name them today and thank them for the contribution they have had in your life?
Yeah. So, there's an immigration attorney that I've worked with now for really over 8 years. And the partner of the law firm, his name is Mark. He is an incredible human being. He is brilliant. He knows so much about immigration law, and he is just such a humble, kind person that, I'm always very impressed by people who have very senior positions in companies, and, you can talk to them like they're a buddy you went to college with. And I always appreciate, again, we're all learning, right? And one of my biggest pet peeves is if someone is trying to understand something, or is really looking for support, if someone else is making them feel, inferior, or that they're not smart enough to understand. I think that, I always appreciate people who really have that ability to teach and really want to make sure you understand, rather than just kind of spewing, numbers or information at you. So Mark from an immigration firm has been pivotal in my career. And really, it's funny because for me, like mentors, I don't necessarily have to know them personally, but there's this blog in the United States called askamanager.org, and a woman named Allison Green runs this blog. She's a former HR executive, and people will write in and ask questions, and she responds to them. She'll open up answers to her readers. And I just think she has such good instincts. She is so knowledgeable. And I'm always really impressed when people can kind of, really simplify or make things easy to understand and digest that could seem very complicated. So I would have to say I feel very fortunate to know a lot of people in my professional circle who I can reach out to if I have a question, if, I'm just wanting to, play some information by them to see what they feel about it. I think it's so important to have your kind of professional tribe, even outside of work. And honestly, in the company I work for now, we have a very large HR team and many people with diverse experiences that I feel very fortunate that every day of my life, I'm still learning. I'm still feeling like I'm mentored by, our senior staff. And to be honest, a mentor doesn't necessarily have to be someone who has 10 more years of experience. I mean, I've learned a lot and found mentors in people who are more peers of mine or even more junior, just because of the way they think about something or what they're doing. So I think everyone listening to your podcast should definitely make sure they have at least one or two solid mentors, people who inspire them and they can learn from. And honestly, I remember years ago, I reached out to someone randomly on LinkedIn, and I was really inspired by the work he was doing. And he said, "Hey, you want to meet for a coffee?" And I couldn't believe that he responded to me so quickly and he was open to it. And it just made me think all you have to do is ask and be willing to put yourself out there, and ask and you shall receive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was about to ask you that it is so important. For instance, in my culture, there is a difference. Like people hesitate to ask in here because they think that they might, if they don't ask in a certain right manner, they might be judged for the way they ask. So is that true in your culture too, over in USA as well? You need to know how to ask someone.
I would have to say from my experience, no, it is a little bit different. I think the fact that you're asking is half the battle. And of course, some people may not be open to it. I think it could really depend, right? So for me, I think over time, I've really tried to not take things personally. And even in the workplace, I tend, as a person, I tend to be a little bit more sensitive, even though I'm pretty assertive as a woman. I do think though that for me, like, I'm not afraid of failure and I'm not afraid of hearing no. It just kind of inspires me to try again or try with another angle. So I obviously I can't speak entirely to the culture. I think people are encouraged to ask, and if you don't, that you're not going to, if you never ask, you don't know what the answer is going to be.
Absolutely. It's very important. Absolutely. As Laura, I received a question yesterday when I uploaded the brochure. I received a question yesterday. It just hit me that I was about to forget about it. It's a student who has asked me to ask you that if you could be kind enough to shed some light, how important is knowing business analytics in terms of getting to know. His actual question is, if I do a master's in business analytics from a USA university, will I be able to have better chances of landing a job in HR or finance?
That's a good question. I think that master's would probably set you up for a potential opportunity in both areas. I think that students should think about what it is he or she is looking to do longer term, or what kind of career path. For me, I think in HR, it's important to understand how to look at data, how to, understand the analytics behind the data that you're looking at. But I feel that, in HR, for example, you're looking at turnover rates, you're looking at retention rates. Sometimes from a recruiting perspective, you can pull data on how are we sourcing our top talent? Where are these people coming from? So I would say from that student's perspective, I would say if you think about what it is you're looking to do, like post school, like what are you passionate about? What do you want to kind of build your career around? And then to me, I mean, again, I graduated, I think it's 14 years ago now, so it's hard to remember, but my studies actually had very little to do with what I do now. I think that, and that's why I think if you're going to be pursuing further higher education, it's important to have, I think, an idea of what it is you want to do. Maybe instead of going to school right away, you could have a year or two of work experience under your belt and then pursue. But I'm not sure how the market is there, Faiza, like if it's very hard to get a job right now, if they expect postgraduate studies or not.
Yeah, they do actually. And those who will get the chance to, get admission abroad, they would like to take up that particular opportunity just to enhance their skills and, and to work in a different environment. Of course, diversity matters now, inclusion matters now. There are so many skills that if you want to be in HR, there's so many global skills that you have to pick up. And, over here as well, there is a huge stride in the last 20 years, 2 decades on diversity and inclusion, on people analytics, on building skills, student skills in different domains. So, yes, these kids are wonderfully equipped to be part of any global scenario. And they just need to do, a little bit of research and how the study that they are going to do today is going to help them, in the next surviving the environment, work environment, which is changing globally. It's just not over here or in your country. Across the globe, there's a shift in the way people want work done. Before COVID, you and I, were reading a lot about the automation of different processes, AI contribution, artificial intelligence, and the different softwares which people are using and how they are shaping the analytics. So yes, these kids are little, they have too much information to process at this particular time to see what is it that the best suited for them. You're absolutely right. They just need to think what is it that they want to do in future, what sort of industries that they have in mind, what sort of work that inspires them, what is the role that comes to their mind. So these are a few things that they need to think about before they make a decision. Laura, my next question to you is, it's wonderful that you're very candid and very honest. Thank you for that. And yeah, absolutely. This is something really inspiring. Laura, you are very keen on, spending time in workout, traveling, trekking. You love the hiking and all that. How does that inspire you? What does it do to you?
Yeah, I mean, so, when I was much younger, I was very overweight. I struggled with, just my weight for a very long time. I think as a woman, a lot of us struggle with body image, but, I decided to kind of take control of my health. And over the course of 2 years, I had lost about 100 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so for me, I'm very motivated. I feel like I set a lot of goals for myself and it just kind of comes from within. I love to hike. I definitely am a big jogger, lifting weights. I especially now. So I have been working remotely since mid-March from everything COVID related. And obviously, the world right now, everyone's just trying to be safe and smart with choices. So for me, it's very important that I am physically active every day. I definitely like to go out for my walks and my jogs. I do have a dog that I take out, every day. So I do think that being physical is a big it has a big impact on my mental health and how I feel. Because I've noticed days that I don't go outside or I don't get as much activity, I just don't feel as good. So I've really tried to prioritize my health and making sure that I take care of myself. And I think that's very important too. Even my company, we're very big on staying active, setting boundaries, making sure that you're not working 20-hour days and that you're taking care of your mental and physical health. I think it's so incredibly important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how has this work from home shift working for you? Is it different? Is it difficult?
I was really worried about it in the beginning because, part of HR, even that kind of water cooler chat or walking down the hallways and talking to employees, I really enjoy that. I'm very extroverted. I like to connect with people, as much as possible. So I was a bit concerned in the beginning. However, I do think that with technology, even right now, right? So we're having a nice conversation. We can see each other. So I do think, luckily, with the involvement of technology, there are a lot of things you can do from home. Luckily, in our business and in kind of marketing and advertising, you're able to do a lot of your work online. So for the impact for me and my team specifically, I've been very fortunate. We've been fortunate that things have been very seamless with the transition. And, actually it was a big change at first, but I think it was more because people had to kind of stay at home because everything was shutting down. It was hard to get groceries. Like, I just think people were like freaking out. And now, of course, it's still very serious. I just think people have become more accustomed to this way of life right now. And so, again, only time will tell eventually with the vaccine and whatnot. But I've been very impressed with everyone's ability who I know to be able to adjust and work remotely, because many of my friends too, they're not back in the office yet because it's just really not safe to do so fully. So
yeah. So Laura, during this particular pandemic time, you must have seen a lot of jobs being shifted. There's a clubbing of jobs. And what sort of future do you see for the sort of jobs that you have been, the sort of industries that you have worked for so far? What sort of future do you see of certain jobs? Do you think a few jobs will eventually be no longer there? Do you think that sort of scenario can come up?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to say. I mean, I've been very fortunate that in our particular business, things have been going well, and we still have a lot of work to do, which is I feel very fortunate, because I know in some industries they've been hit very hard. I know people in the service industry that, if restaurants aren't open up and you can't eat inside, you really can't be working. And I do think, though, that I don't think we're really going to see the ripple effects of everything from COVID for quite some time. I think that, when I think about even the New York City area, because, commercial real estate, obviously, if a lot of employers are realizing that many of their staff can work remotely and be successful, maybe some of these companies won't want to have so much space in the New York City area and pay those kind of leases. So I do think that maybe that's an industry that could be hit. And again, I feel like sometimes when you're in the middle of the storm, you can't really see everything until you're on the other side. And right now, I feel that, obviously with unemployment in the United States right now and certain people being hit really hard, it's a difficult time for many people. So I just feel very fortunate to still have a job and still be able to work, every day. But I do think certain industries are getting hit harder than others. And this is a good time for people to try to brush up on any skills, reach out to their network. I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn where people are saying, I've been laid off or furloughed and I'm looking for something. So I think, again, the power of that connection and just reaching out to your network and trying to help one another is so key. So I'm hoping we can all bounce back. But again, I do think the way work kind of, how we move forward in the way of working, it's still kind of too early to know what the long-term effects will be at this point.
Absolutely, yes. Laura, I think you have mentioned a wonderful key aspect right now. That I read it a few days back, that in this particular COVID, a lot of people will realize eventually that their net worth is their net worth now. So yeah, I don't remember who said it, but I think that the way you were talking about it, it struck me the chord. Yes, this is, I think, is going to be wonderful. This is one skill that a lot of young kids who would be listening to us, they need to pick up. Networking is so important. Keeping good relations, even though you leave certain companies and you leave certain jobs, keeping in touch with them professionally is so important, and it is going to play a pivotal role, a key role, a very significant role in shaping up few people's future and their lives. So thank you so much, Laura. This is wonderful, very important thing that you have just mentioned. Laura, what is my next question to you would be, now that we talked about COVID and everything, what inspires you to be so positive always?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I'm so positive always. But you know, I I am definitely more of a glass is half full kind of person. I think that, every morning we wake up and we have a choice about how we're going to approach the day and our attitude. And I think it's so important to just have open eyes, open heart every day. I think that, it's important to find things that really are meaningful to you, whether those be hobbies or things that you enjoy in your life that bring you a lot of value and joy. And I get a lot of energy from my relationships with people. So whether those are my personal connections or my professional connections, I feel so fortunate to know so many amazing people who are just really incredible. And I think that that's for me, right? So even though, for example, I haven't seen you in 9 years.
Yeah.
It's so nice that we can be sitting here having this conversation,
Absolutely.
and I really think fondly back to those days of our university days. And so that's how I feel, right? Like you're in a moment with a group of people and you know that it's never going to be like that again, but you
Yeah.
know that you can always be in touch with them and you can always check in and see how things are doing. So I just think it's so nice in this life that, life is short and I think we have to make the most of it. And I think, the help and energy and love you put out in the world, you kind of get back. And that's why I try every day just to be as positive and helpful as possible, because you never know who really needs that.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Laura. And during this particular time period from work from home and looking at how people are taking positively, keeping themselves, positively involved with so many initiatives, social work, volunteering initiative. Laura, I have seen that you also volunteer a lot, and you have been volunteering since your school time. So how this volunteering helps in making networks? But does it also help in the networking, these volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you volunteer, and again, like, so the volunteer work I do, I'm very passionate about helping animals and animal welfare. So actually, I've been a foster to animals. So I have my own dog. I don't have any children, just my little fur baby. But I've been able to take in dogs who need temporary homes until they're adopted by a new family. And, I knew I wanted to get more involved. I knew that I had the space to be able to do it. And it's just been such an incredible opportunity. I've stayed in touch with many of the families who have adopted the dogs that I've fostered. One dog particularly I got right when COVID was hitting its peak in March, and I had that dog for 8 weeks. And I have to say I was so emotional giving that dog away. But that's the whole thing, right? Is like you're there for a moment and you help this animal in need to kind of find its forever home, and then you feel very proud of what you've been able to do and accomplish in that short period of time. So for me, I've really found my passion with that. It's something that I really enjoy being a part of. And other volunteer type work, I mean, obviously physical volunteer work right now is not so easy with COVID, but I do think it's so important even in the workplace. Like our company gives off time each year for employees to volunteer. It's paid time that they can have, and we always do a ton of pro bono work to try to help other companies and people in need. So I think it's so important in your life, whether it's personal, professional, to just try to find ways to give back. And it brings me a lot of joy and meaning to be able to do that.
Absolutely, Laura. I think it's a wonderful point that you have raised that, and I've seen that during this particular COVID, one thing which is my personal belief, that kindness and positivity is becoming a new form of currency for many of us now. The amount of the kindness that I have seen on social media and globally, people have come together because we all are in this particular situation together, and all of us are trying to find our solutions to it. So this is, of course, a wonderful way to be a part of a positive part of the society. Laura, again. What are you have mashallah achieved so much along the way, wonderful career, great family, great relationships. Are there still things on your bucket list?
On my bucket list, huh? I mean, the bucket list I feel like is on pause right now because a lot of my bucket list is travel related. I think that for me, it's just really seeing as much of the world as possible. And that is like a huge priority to me. That's basically one of my number one things that gets me up every day. But of course, for now, being appreciative of what I have and kind of staying local, that would definitely be a big thing. Bucket list career wise, I was promoted to my current role in January, so I definitely have, I think, some time to really grow into this kind of title and role and still continue to learn. But I do think down the road, career wise, I am very ambitious. So continuing to learn is so important to me. And really with bucket lists, like one of my goals was to hit every continent by the time I'm 40. But with COVID, that I think has thrown a wrench in the plan. So maybe if I say by 45, but I would love, I definitely would love to, travel to Africa. I had New Zealand planned at the end of this year, but again, that may be postponed. So now my bucket list has like bigger, meatier trips, so I can continue to experience other cultures and areas.
Absolutely. I think inshallah pretty soon we will be flying and we will be enjoying the different places. So we have places to go to, and we inshallah will have plenty of time to do and rearrange the bucket list. Laura, thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you have been saying to us. Is there any message that you would want to give to the people who would be watching you?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, thank you so much, Faiza, for your time and for asking me to be a part of this. I would say, everyone can start small. I think that, just really not being afraid of rejection, reaching out to people and just asking and don't being afraid to hear no. I think that sometimes it can feel very scary to step out of your comfort zone or feel vulnerable, but I'm always very in awe of people who step out of their comfort zone and try to push a little bit further. So I would just say, setting goals for yourself and also just kind of having those check-ins and milestones, it's so important. And nothing's going to go perfect, right? Like life is challenging and we get hit with a lot of roadblocks, but I think as long as you're slowly trying to move towards your goals, you're always going to be in the right place. So I really appreciate this and your time, and of course if you ever have any follow-up questions or need anything, you know where to find me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Laura. I wish you more success, and I just have a request that inshallah, whenever you travel, try to do a vlog on all those travels, because it will be so much fun to look at different countries and cultures that you are going to through the vlog that you will be establishing. So maybe an Insta story or a vlog, that would be my request to you. Thank you so much for this dose of positivity. Enjoy yourself. May God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you so much. Great to see you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.